everyone, and welcome back to the Sedona International Film Festival. I'm your host, Carol Kahn. We are coming to you live from Yavapai College, the Sedona campus, and we'd like to thank our sponsor, Northern Arizona Healthcare. And I would like to introduce to you to Julia Wall. Welcome.
Thank you.
This is your first time in Sedona?
Yes.
It is, and we were talking briefly, so Julia and I have a lot in common. She's originally from North Carolina, and the chat that we were chatting about was like just old home week, right? It just brought me back there.
Yes, exactly.
It's so awesome. So where are you living now in North Carolina?
So right now I live in Carborough, North Carolina. It's right outside of Chapel Hill, and I work for the Raleigh News and Observer as a visual journalist. So I'm a daily news photographer and videographer.
That is awesome. So tell us a little bit about your film. Your film is, the title of it?
My film is titled Sound of Judgement.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about the film.
So the film kind of follows a few different people through a Black Lives Matter movement in Graham, North Carolina, which is the county seat of Alamance County. It's located in central North Carolina. And it's a part of a larger story package that is a long-form narrative about the history of the place and the endurance of this social movement, but how the history of the place they have a history of suppressing Black political movement, Black social movements, pretty much any social movement in the area. And after George Floyd was murdered in 2020, protests started there in what was a very unlikely place for protests to be occurring. And throughout the summer of 2020, protests in other parts of the state kind of stopped and died out, and they kept going in Graham. So myself and a reporter decided that was where we wanted to go see what was happening.
So being a female, being a video journalist, how was it unnerving at all to be part of that? And there's a follow-up question with that as well. But
I mean, in some ways, yes, but through my job, I meet so many different people every day. Every day is different. I have a lot of practice in being in places where I might not belong. So it is unnerving in certain situations, but in this film in particular, we were in public a lot. We were outside a lot. We were in large groups of people where it was kind of inherent to the scenario where everyone was kind of looking out for each other. And I was usually with the reporter that worked on the story. Her name is Carly Brousseau. She couldn't be here on this trip, but she was, we always had each other's back. So both being females in the field, we were always looking out for each other, and then people around us were also looking out for us and other journalists who were there. So I didn't ever feel really particularly in danger from being a woman in this scenario.
Sure. And not just being a woman also, but just being a journalist as well. But set the stage a little bit so people kind of understand what North Carolina is like and why this particular film is of importance.
Absolutely. So North Carolina is... It's very progressive in a lot of ways, and it's very progressive in the central part of the state, what's called the Research Triangle, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. It's kind of a bubble. And so as we were approaching the 2020 election, it was really unclear which way the state was going to swing. And at my organization, we did a lot of reporting on the politics of the state, but this place was really where those tensions between the two political sides, as we approached the election, it was really bubbling up in this place. So it was important to be able to show that this kind of stronghold of conservative politics, but also that has a history of some pretty intense racism in that area, that this is a local reflection of a national conversation. And this story was important to show people that these kinds of things happen in your backyard. They happen in the little town that you like to drive through and get coffee on your way from Greensboro to Raleigh or any of that. So people didn't expect this kind of thing to be happening there, and we thought it was really important to show people how it affected the people involved.
Mm-hmm. And prior to us sitting down here to talk, we were briefly talking and catching up, and I had told Julia basically that I moved to North Carolina in 1980, and it was right before a KKK shooting in downtown Greensboro, North Carolina. And we had chatted about that, and you were in school at the time, or in school, they don't even talk about a part of North Carolina history that is of great importance.
Absolutely, yes. I never learned about the Greensboro Massacre in school. In public schools in North Carolina, there's always a North Carolina curriculum. There's a North Carolina history chapter, and you learn about the Wright brothers, and you learn about all these, cool, fun, lighthearted things. But you don't learn about the Nazi Klan shootout, as some people called it, where people died. You don't learn about the 1898 race massacre that occurred in Wilmington, where I was born and raised. I didn't learn about it until I was almost 18 years old. And even then, it was outside of the setting of school. So there's so many of these stories and through lines to different parts of history that we kind of gloss over, and we don't revisit them because they're painful and they're hard to revisit. And it's hard for people to accept that things like this could have occurred and not ever been resolved or made right. And people have different definitions of what that might mean.
And this particular piece that you did, right, this was for the Raleigh News and Observer.
Yes, it was also in partnership, I should mention, it was also in partnership with ProPublica. So they helped fund the reporter's salary who was working on the project, so we were able to editorially also work with ProPublica.
Mm-hmm. And how was it received?
It was really well received, actually. No one challenged the accuracy, no one challenged the... Well, I shouldn't say that. Most people didn't. The Graham Police Department did, but they were not correct about their challenge. But it was really well received by the activist community. They held a screening of it at a local bar a week after it published. They were thanking us profusely for being able to portray what happened accurately. And in our community, it was accepted as a piece of a documentation of a part of this North Carolina's history. And of course, some people called it fake news or called it biased journalism, but it was a historical it was a lot more than that. And so it was mixed receiving in terms of on the political spectrum, but in that community and in the state of North Carolina, I think it generally was accepted as this is great. This is great that we're able to show people this.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been doing this?
I have been in visual journalism since about 2013, and I've been at the News and Observer for almost 5 years.
Wow, that's great. And is there anything being in news that that surprised you or surprises you?
Yes, I mean, in this story in particular, in the context of this story in particular, I was quite surprised because it was something I hadn't dealt with yet, how much pushback we got on just making basic records requests to the various law enforcement agencies. So we really had to fight to get basic FOIA requests fulfilled. Some of them never went fulfilled, and we're still fighting in court to get access to body camera footage that, has been said by a judge that it needs to be handed over. So I was really surprised by the endurance of the agencies to resist what we are constitutionally able to access as journalists.
Mm-hmm. And where can the film be seen?
So the film can be seen on the News and Observer's website or on ProPublica's website or Vimeo page. And it's embedded in our website, Sound of Judgment, News and Observer. If you do a quick Google search on that, or ProPublica Sound of Judgment, you can be able to find the article and all the associated videos, including an event we did with ProPublica and talking in conversation about race, police, and power in that part of the state.
Awesome. And when is it being shown here in Sedona?
It will be shown this afternoon at 4 p.m., and it was also shown on Sunday morning.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you were here to Sedona, first time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and also if I get back to North Carolina, I'll be sure to connect.
Yes, please do.
That would be awesome. All right. And thank you so much for being with us. We will be back with more from the Sedona International Film Festival after this.